Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth from Elpis Astrology at elpisastrology.com. Thanks for joining me today. So today I am going to do the whole of March from the standpoint of an astrological forecast. And individually, I will be doing each of your sun signs and or ascendants. So I will put a timestamp in for each of the ascendants so you can go directly to what is happening with regards to you specifically. So when we look at March 2022, we can really say that there's going to be some big changes in March for sure. So that if things have been stuck for you and not moving forward, this is the month where you're actually going to be able to see that the changes are starting to happen, and they're probably going to happen pretty rapidly too. So we start off on the 2nd of March 2022 with our new moon in Pisces, and it'll be at 12 degrees Pisces, 7 minutes, at 9:34 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will also have Mars in Capricorn going over Venus to connect with Pluto in Capricorn. So essentially having a Mars-Venus-Pluto conjunction. This is extremely powerful. Now when we have Mars and Venus together, typically we're talking about the celestial lovers. But here I think we're talking about males and females that are in traditional institutions working to transform things. Of course, the transformation comes through Pluto. So I would say this is really intense behind the scenes efforts by those people in power in our institutions, really putting great change into place. And I would expect to actually see that in the real world. That's not just going to be, we hope it's happening type of thing, and then we hear about it later. We're actually going to hear and see announcements about things with regards to change. So we then have on the 3rd of March, this whole Venus specifically does conjunct Pluto on her own. So even though Mars is still hovering around, we now have the diplomatic Venus conjuncting with the transformation. And I thought this was more with regards to peace or peaceful type activities, diplomatic type of activities, but probably through a woman. So we may have a woman rising here that brings great diplomacy to the world, and of course specifically to other places in the world that are potentially big hotspots right now. On the 5th of March, we have the Sun conjuncting Jupiter in Pisces at 14 degrees of Pisces. Now on the 19th of March, Mercury will come up to this point too. And I think what this is going to be all about is news literally about our waters, our ocean. And I think a lot more is going to come out with this whole Jupiter in Pisces. We literally have more concern with our waters. We're going to have more things like flooding. So certainly in March, you can look out for things like that. I would, if individually you've got this prominent in your chart, literally be looking for things regarding water in your home. If there's anything that is dripping or potentially could have some kind of problems with water, I would get it resolved. This is a pretty big effect here. On the 7th of March, we have an interesting transit that's happening. And I thought this was sort of a turning point for March, even though it's just the 7th of March. We have Venus still conjuncting Mars, but it's now at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So now Venus and Mars take on a completely different hue with regards to what they mean. And I'll get to that in a second, but the important point is that this transit actually conjuncts the same degree point, 0 degrees and some minutes, Aquarius, that we had in December 2020. Where we had a whole new 20-year cycle happen or start with both Jupiter and Saturn. And this is of significance too. So this really gives, from my standpoint, it gives a buy-in. So even though the actual transit, the 20-year cycle started in December 2020, with this conjunction of Venus and Mars at the same degree point, it really now says that literally men and women joining together in humanitarian needs, humanitarian type of action, There's going to be a lot more intellectual type things going on, and I would not be surprised if we have some major scientific, not just a discovery, but scientific discoveries sort of started around the 7th of March, and I would say continuing the whole way through March as well. But this is tied into the cycle of the 20 years, so we're going to see lots of new things happening, certainly in the next 20 years with regards to science and literally outer space. Now, Pluto will reach this point on the 1st of March, 2023. And of course, then that's that slow-moving transformational energy where it more incorporates the world in what's going on. So we really have another year almost from now with regards to some real visuals of how our world has changed scientifically, intellectually, from a humanitarian standpoint, that sort of thing. So this is a process over the next year as Pluto makes his way up to that same point as well, right? So when we break down this whole Venus-Mars at 0 degrees of Aquarius, let's look at Mars first. So Mars in Aquarius is very dynamic. It can be rebellious and nervously overcharged. Mars, instead of making the action himself, in Aquarius sparks that action. And that's a little different with regards to the action Mars is going to exert as a result of this conjunction of Mars and Venus at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So he sparks that action in others. So you can expect early March and all the way through March, probably lots of rising up, literally, of the people. This is grassroots type thing. These are also intellectuals. You know, if you think back to any newsreels that you saw, say from the 50s and 60s, I'm always amazed when you actually get to witness broadcasters and journalists speaking what they think is the truth, as opposed to having it diluted down and, you know, transformed through the media machine. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that too, where we're going to have on-the-spot type things where people are going to start speaking the truth, and it's going to get on the airwaves to really help us understand what's going on in this world. But certainly we're going to have literally the people rising and starting to do marches. I don't necessarily see big, like, out-of-hand protests here, but I do see the people rising, and it's going to be literally everywhere in the world to transform our society, the way we do things, the way things are meted out, where some people get things other people don't. There's going to be a real push for equality amongst all of us. So that's Mars. When we look at Venus in Aquarius, Venus idealizes love, but she brings a mental energy along with diplomatic relations, but specifically for humanitarian needs. She's certainly unconventional in Aquarius, and she seeks freedom from the fetters of relationships. And I would say probably around this time, we're going to be seeing literally breakups of relationships too, where people are just going to say, I need my freedom. And there's going to be a lot of that happening here too. But certainly when we look at the fact that really Venus and Mars in conjunction really stayed more in Capricorn before it then went into Aquarius, I really saw this more of Venus distributing the gains, right? The gains that she got in Capricorn. Capricorn's all about rising to the top, gaining power and control, but it's also gaining the goods, the money, right? That's kind of what Venus represents. So she's taking the gains that was made and then distributing that for the next few months as she's sparking off this whole conjunction with Mars and Aquarius and activating that whole 20-year cycle of Jupiter and Saturn. So look for that as well. In fact, perhaps we'll see even announcements where literally money is going to be distributed for humanitarian needs, and not necessarily just because there was some big earthquake or something. There's just going to be more distribution of the money that's out there to others that are in need. All right, So we've got the full moon that's going to be in Virgo on the 18th of March at 12:17 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time at 27 degrees of Virgo, 40 minutes. We're going to have Venus is going to be on her way to conjunct Saturn at this time, so bringing a really important diplomatic message to perhaps put something in writing in the law, to really form some kind of permanent thing with regards to diplomacy. That's what I feel here. And then, of course, Venus will be squaring Uranus, so this could be some upsetting, surprising news over the airways. That's where I saw this, because of course Uranus can represent the airwaves literally. But we do have Venus sextiling Chiron, and certainly in Virgo, with the whole Virgo full moon, Virgo is all about health as well as service to others. So it seems to me that what may happen during this full moon is that we collect all the right information and facts and apply it to this whole health situation that we have that gives us more opportunities to have better health. And so I think this full moon on the 18th of March will mark some kind of turning point with regards to the whole viruses, and give us some really good news with regarding how we're going to get through this. We may, however, with the square, still have some other variant come in to cause continued problems in this area. So on the 21st of March, we have, certainly from an astrological standpoint, we have the beginning of the new year in astrology. I'm specifically talking about Western astrology, of course. And this is when the sun ingresses in at 0 degrees of Aries. So here we have the start of the astrological new year for Western astrologers. Happy New Year, everybody. But it also marks for you, Aries, a time of new beginnings for you as well. Now, what's interesting is this whole effect of whatever turns up in this chart at this time, of course, is going to cover the whole time period for 3 months with regards to influence. So we look at the moon, and the moon is at 29 degrees of Libra, 53 minutes, squaring Pluto. So we can expect that there's going to be some intense, so when we have a 29 degree point anywhere in a chart, we know that there's culminating energies and it tends to become fairly intense. So I would suggest that not only around the 21st of March, but for the next 3 months, we're also going to have an intensification with regards to some kind of diplomacy going on. Libra represents that. It can be the law, so we may actually have the law being laid down as well. And certainly squaring Pluto, there's going to be some kind of resistance with regards to the old guard, right? That's Pluto, that's the people in power. What else could this be? I really got the feeling of laws somehow, that laws, and maybe this is going to go back to, laws being enacted more locally, municipalities doing it, or communities doing it more, as opposed to more federal or state laws, and that there's resistance to those in power, i.e. those in the state and those in the federal government, resisting those. That, I think, intuitively is what this is about. So we may see a lot more big pushes in that area. And again, this is, people seeking peace and harmony and just wanting the best for everybody is what it boils down to. It certainly asks for peace and give peace a chance. So from a mundane standpoint, perhaps that will also be in effect here too. Maybe even the Ukraine under the microscope with regards to peaceful negotiations. We do have Mercury conjuncting Jupiter too, and this gives a lovely energy with regards to, and of course this is going to be in Pisces. So Pisces always seeks out compassion, really tries to hone into how are you feeling, and has this empathetic sort of spiritual sort of hue to your conversations. So I would say that's a nice thing to go along with the intensity that's going to be with regards to the resistance of those in power. But we also have Venus, and it's a wide square, but Venus will be squaring Uranus at this time too. So again, this is that resistance to change, right? And again, I think there's going to be maybe some uprising of women to really try to enact change here. I haven't seen that specifically. I'm not saying women aren't working behind the scenes, but this may bring something more to the forefront where we see women taking more of a role with regards to the change that we need to make in our world. And we'll actually see faces. It's not just going to be some words written about them. All right, so we end the month with a new moon in Aries. So happy new year to you, Aries. It is on the 31st of March at 11:25 p.m. And of course, this is Pacific Daylight Time. Elsewhere, it will be on April Fool's Day, the 1st of April. So at this new moon in Aries, we have the moon at 11 degrees of Aries, 31 minutes. And nicely, this sun and moon, because at every new moon we have the moon and the sun together, will conjunct Chiron. And I thought it was very appropriate that we sort of end March, and in many respects we're kind of ending a season in some ways with this conjuncting Chiron. And this just says, because of course Aries is the start of the zodiac, this is just a whole new start with regards to us healing. So I guess we can look towards the end of March with regards to some real line in the sand that we can say, oh, thank goodness, we're actually going to have better health. And certainly if you've got this anywhere in your chart and you've been suffering from ill health of any sort, this could be a whole new start for you. So we're looking at between 10 and 12 degrees of Aries, say your sun is there or your ascendant or a conglomeration of planets. The other thing we have is Neptune will be sextiling the north nodes of the moon in Taurus. Also really beautiful energy. It's difficult energy to capture unless you're vibrating to a very high level. So Neptune is really speaking to great compassion. It's agape love. It's like, communicating with everybody on the same level and not having any preconceived ideas with whoever you're speaking to. So it's a pretty high level of consciousness we're talking about, but if you're certainly open to it, this can certainly change. The more people that enter into that type of consciousness, however long you can stay in there, this is going to bring, for all of us globally, this north nodes of destiny to a much higher level with regards to compassion. Compassion for all, but especially compassion for ourselves, right? Now Saturn will be squaring Neptune sextiles, but Saturn will be squaring this. So Saturn goes back to the traditional, right? So it goes back to the more 3D type things with regards to where should we be going next as part of mankind. So again, I'm talking about more mundane type aspects. And so this is those in charge, those who've been telling us what to do, saying that we must continue doing it this way, the traditional ways. Whereas the Neptune sextile is saying, look, I'm trying to give you some opportunities here to really do things a lot better. It's not going to be more difficult to do it. It just means that more people will benefit. And this may also be tied into, with regards to our earth, literally, right? Our farming practices, and by extension, anything to do with our water as well, where we're going to be given some opportunities to clean things up. And I think we must take them. But we're going to have some resistance from those that are kind of ruling the traditional ways we've been doing things. All right. Next, I'm going to be covering each of the sun signs and ascendants. My preference is for you to actually read for your ascendant if you can only read or listen to one. This is going to give you the area of your life that's going to be affected by the new moons and the full moons and then any other aspects that are happening in March. Right, so before I go on to go into your individual signs or ascendants, this is my first attempt at doing monthly videos by sign and posting them by sign, so they can be more specific and individual to each of you. I'd be interested to hear your comments if you have any, and certainly if you feel that you like this format, I'd like to hear that too. Always open to suggestions, and I hope this is going to be of benefit to everybody. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a lot of preparation, but it's been a lot of fun too, and I plan to continue this and maybe even offer new things to my subscribers and viewers. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful March. Aquarius. So Aquarius, this new moon in Pisces is in your second house of earned income. And what's interesting, following just past that new moon, on the 7th of March, you're going to be hosting both Venus and Mars right at the beginning, the 0-degree point of Aquarius. And it's going to stay in there for 1 to 2 weeks. So this says to me, because this new moon is in your second house, for most Aquarius, this is going to be a new source of money for you coming in. Maybe you unexpectedly get a raise. It'll be a big raise. Or you unexpectedly are offered a new job. Now, it'll probably be related to something that is Aquarian in nature. So that would be anything electronic, anything over the airwaves, anything to do with things like YouTube, the internet, computers, videos, that sort of thing. There could be a whole new beginning for you, but it's going to be really positive for you, Aquarius, because you've got that you're hosting Venus and Mars for a number of weeks in your sign. Take advantage of it. Now, the other thing that it can bring in for you, certainly in March, is potentially a whole new, unusual partnership. So when we talk about Aquarius and the celestial lovers, Venus and Mars being in there for a couple weeks for you, this is going to bring in somebody that's not your usual kind of person. So the love relationship may be more intellectual as well. That's the other thing that Aquarius has. It could also have a scientific bent of some sort. So for some Aquarians, this could be you making some kind of scientific discovery and sharing that with the world. Good luck with that for those that are in that category. But I think for the vast majority, there could be some kind of unusual, unexpected love relationship come in. And we'll just take the whole of March. And it's going to be predicated by that new moon in Pisces in your second house, activating your value system as well. And then soon afterwards, you have that conjunction of Venus and Mars in your sign for weeks to come. So the full moon in Virgo is going to be in your 8th house. So I would say sort of mid-March, you're going to have some kind of secret come to light. Either your secrets come out or someone else's secrets come out. But it could also have you, because it's a full moon, and Virgo is all about obligations and service too. I thought that maybe some kind of investment is ending, or some kind of obligation. And there might have been, Aquarius, some kind of tie-in psychologically, that you were tied into some kind of obligation involving money that's going to end now. And this may end unexpectedly too, where you didn't think this was going to happen. But the full moon brings it in and says, you no longer have to pay attention to this obligation that's associated with money. But it can also mean a loan ends, right? So that you're able to pay off a loan at this time. Maybe an inheritance comes. For those folks that do have inheritances coming in, that's also ruled by the 8th house. Maybe that inheritance comes in and you're able to pay off all your debt. 2 things at once, right? Now, not everyone's going to have that. But this is a positive thing, I think, for you, Aquarius, where something ends that was an obligation, that was a burdensome thing for you with regards to money. The new moon in Aries is going to be in your 3rd house. So the 3rd house is, as per usual, about communications. I think this is going to have some new start with regards to siblings. So maybe if you had a fallout, say, with your siblings, or maybe even your neighbors, this could have a whole new start there, where you see a new way, a new path to initiate communications with regards to siblings and or neighbors. But it can also bring in a new commercial venture. I would say that if it was something to do with the healing arts, that would be of benefit to you. That would be great. We're going to have Saturn, which is still going to be obviously in your sign all of this year, 2022. And as a positive effect, Saturn is going to be bringing you stability and longevity. And it's going to be, of course, having you have new responsibilities. So the idea here with Saturn in your sign all year is really going to speak to the fact that take on the responsibilities, don't shrug off your responsibilities, because that will actually bring you long-term benefits. You know, Saturn always wants to bring you rewards. When we talk about Jupiter, these are kind of beneficial things, but Saturn also brings you rewards for hard work. So this is you working hard, especially with regards to, say, communications at this time, maybe improving some kind of communications with regards to your siblings and your neighbors or your neighborhood. But you've got some stability here happening for you, and allow this whole year to be one of setting things in place, structures in place that actually help you move about your day to day. So this would be new structures, say, in your relationships, literally the home that you're in, the job that you're doing. I would say wherever you're putting your effort in, that's Saturn, put your full effort into it, because that's going to pay off in spades once this Saturn leaves your sign. Saturn will be leaving you a big benefit in 2023 as a result of hard work. Take care, Aquarius. So that's my wrap up for March 2022. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. It is a new format that I'm using. I would be delighted to hear any comments or suggestions that you have. I hope everyone has benefited from being able to listen more specifically to their individual sign and or ascendant. I've had a lot of fun putting this together and plan to continue, but I'd love to hear from you, and your comments are always welcome. Have a wonderful March. We are springing into spring and then on to summer. Looking forward to it. Sending everybody lots of love. Bye for now.